Someone told you to save 3 to 6 months of expenses. And look, that's not wrong, it's just incomplete. Because a nurse making $52,000 a year and an engineer making $145,000 a year do not need the same cash cushion. The risk is different. The lifestyle volatility is different. The math is different. And if you're using the wrong number, you're either sitting on dead money that should be invested or you're one car repair away from a credit card spiral. Today, we're running the exact math by income level. Your number is in this video. I spend way too much time thinking about emergency funds. If you're someone who's been told to just save 6 months of expenses and call it a day, you've been given advice that worked in 1983 but doesn't account for how volatile income has become, how expensive emergencies actually are, or how your tax bracket completely changes what safety actually looks like. And here's the thing most people don't realize. The 3 to 6 month rule was invented when pensions existed, when job security was real, when a single income could support a family. That world is gone. But the advice stuck around like financial folklore? Let me tell you something. The average American has about $4,000 in savings. $4,000. According to a Federal Reserve study, 40% of Americans couldn't cover a $400 emergency without borrowing or selling something. $400. That's not a transmission. That's not a medical bill. That's a flat tire and a vet visit. And yet we keep repeating this 3 to 6 month mantra like it's some kind of universal law of physics. It's not. It's a starting point. And for most people, it's the wrong starting point. Now, you might be thinking, okay, so what's my number? And that's exactly what we're about to calculate. But here's where it gets really interesting. Your number isn't just about your expenses. It's about your income volatility, your industry risk, your household structure, and something almost nobody talks about, your psychological relationship with money. Because Biggie could have $15,000 in the bank and feel terrified, while someone else has $8,000 and sleeps like a baby. And both of those feelings are sending signals about what your real number needs to be. Let's start with the math. If you're making $35,000 a year, your monthly take-home is probably around $2,400 after taxes. Let's say your expenses are $2,000 a month. Rent, utilities, groceries, gas, insurance, the basics. The standard advice says save $6,000 to $12,000, 3 to 6 months. But here's the strange part. At that income level, 6 months of expenses represents half your annual take-home pay. Half. Do you know how long it takes someone making $35,000 to save $12,000? Years. Literally years. And during those years, they're not investing. They're not building wealth. They're sitting on a pile of cash that earns 0.01% interest while inflation eats it alive. So here's what most people don't realize. At lower income levels, the emergency fund advice is actually a trap. It keeps you poor. Because while you're grinding to hit that $12,000 target, someone making $100,000 is investing the difference and compounding returns. The wealth gap isn't just about income. It's about who gets to invest and who gets told to hoard cash. But this is where it gets disturbing. Because the reason low-income earners are told to save more months of expenses is because they're considered higher risk. They're more likely to lose a job, more likely to face an emergency, more likely to not have access to credit, and all of that is true. But the advice doesn't account for the opportunity cost. It doesn't account for the fact that telling someone making $35,000 to save $12,000 is functionally telling them to stay broke longer. Here's the thing. If you're in that income range, your real number is closer to 3 months of expenses, not 6, $4,500 to $6,000. Enough to cover a job loss, a car repair, a medical bill, but not so much that you're sacrificing years of compound growth. And once you hit that number, every extra dollar goes to paying off high interest debt or investing in a Roth IRA. Because at that income level, time in the market is worth more than another $2,000 in a savings account. Now let's move up. You're making $60,000 a year. Take home is around $4,000 a month. Expenses are maybe $3,200. You're comfortable. Not rich, but stable. The standard advice says save $9,600 to $19,200. 3 to 6 months. And here's where the psychology starts to matter. Because at this income level, you probably have access to credit. You got a credit card with a $5,000 limit, maybe a HELOC if you own a home. So the question becomes, do you need 6 months of cash or do you need 3 months of cash plus access to credit? Here's what happens next. Most people at this income level oversave. They hit 20,000 in their emergency fund and feel safe. But that 20,000 is earning nothing. Meanwhile, if they'd kept 12,000 in cash and put 8,000 into an index fund 5 years ago, that 8,000 would be worth 14,000 today. They gave up $6,000 of growth because they were told more cash equals more safety. And look, I get it. Cash feels safe. But cash is also a depreciating asset. Every year you hold it, it loses purchasing power. So here's your real number if you're making 60,000. 4 months of expenses, $12,800. That's enough to cover a job loss while you find new work. Enough to handle a surprise medical bill or a busted furnace, but not so much that you're leaving serious money on the table. And if you've got good credit and a stable job, you can even go lower. 10,000 in cash, and the rest in a brokerage account you can access if you absolutely need to. Now, you might be thinking, but what if I lose my job and the market crashes at the same time? And that's a fair question. It happened in 2008. It happened in 2020. But here's the real reason this matters. If you're so afraid of that scenario that you're keeping 30,000 in cash, you're not preparing for an emergency. You're preparing for the apocalypse. An apocalypse level preparation has a cost. It's called opportunity cost. And it's the difference between retiring at 62 and retiring at 67. Let's go higher. You're making 100,000 a year. Take home is around 6,000 a month. Expenses are maybe 4,500. You've got a mortgage, 2 cars, kids, the whole thing. The standard advice says save 13,500 to 27,000, 3 to 6 months. And at this level, here's where it gets really interesting, because you're now in a tax bracket where every dollar you invest gets taxed differently. You've got access to a 401k match. You've probably got decent credit, and your job loss risk is actually lower than someone making 35,000, even though the advice treats you the same. Here's the strange part. People at this income level tend to keep way more than 6 months. I've seen clients with 50,000 in savings, 50. And when I ask why, they say it makes them feel secure, and I get it. But that 50,000 represents almost a year of expenses. And if you're out of work for a year, you've got bigger problems than your emergency fund. You've got an industry problem, a skills problem, a geographic problem. 50,000 in cash isn't solving that. A career pivot is. So here's your real number at 100,000. 5 months of expenses, $18,750. That's enough to cover a job transition, a major home repair, an unexpected medical situation, but not so much that you're sacrificing retirement contributions or taxable brokerage growth. And here's the kicker. At this income level, you should also have a sinking fund, separate from your emergency fund, for known future expenses, new roof, new car, kids' braces. Because if you're dipping into your emergency fund for predictable expenses, you don't have an emergency fund. You have a slush fund, and slush funds get spent. Now let's talk about the people making 150,000 and up, because this is where the advice gets really incomplete. If you're making 150,000, your take home is around 9,000 a month. Expenses might be 6,500. You've got a nice house, private school maybe, a couple of vacations a year. The standard advice says save 19,500 to 39,000, 3 to 6 months. And here's what most people don't realize. At this income level, cash is your worst asset, because what happens next changes everything. You're in the 24% tax bracket. Every dollar you invest in a 401k saves you 24 cents in taxes. Every dollar in a brokerage account grows tax deferred until you sell. But every dollar in a savings account gets taxed as ordinary income on the interest, which is basically zero anyway. So you're holding 39,000 in cash, earning maybe 3% if you're lucky, which is $1,170 a year, and you're paying taxes on that. Meanwhile, that same 39,000 in the market averages 10% annually. That's 3,900 a year. You're giving up $2,700 every single year because you were told to keep 6 months of expenses in cash. Here's your real number at 150,000. 4 months of expenses, $26,000. And honestly, you could go lower because at this income level, you got options, you got credit, you got a network, you got skills that are in demand. If you lose your job, you're not worried about making rent, you're worried about maintaining lifestyle. And lifestyle is negotiable, survival is not. But here's the disturbing part. The people who need the smallest emergency funds are the ones with the largest ones. And the people who need the largest emergency funds are the ones with the smallest ones. It's backwards. And it's by design. Because the financial system makes money when you're scared. Scared people keep cash in savings accounts. Scared people don't invest. Scared people stay poor. Now let's talk about the psychology. Because your emergency fund number isn't just math, it's emotion. And if you grew up poor, if you watched your parents lose a house, if you've ever had your power shut off, your number's gonna be higher, and that's okay. But you need to know that's what's happening. You need to know you're not optimizing for wealth. You're optimizing for safety, and safety has a price. I worked with someone once, let's call him Biggie, making $120,000 a year. He had $60,000 in his savings account. 60. I asked him why. He said his dad lost his job in 2008 and they lost everything. He was 14. He remembered the fear, the shame, the uncertainty, and he swore he'd never feel that way again. So he hoarded cash. And I told him, I get it, but you're not your dad. You've got a different job, a different economy, different skills. And $60,000 in cash isn't protecting you from 2008, it's protecting you from a memory. We ran the math. His expenses were $5,500 a month. 4 months was $22,000. We moved $38,000 into a brokerage account. Within 2 years, it grew to $51,000. He made $13,000 by letting go of a fear that wasn't even his. That's the power of knowing your real number. Here's the thing. Your emergency fund is not your wealth building tool. It's your safety net. And safety nets are supposed to catch you, not suffocate you. If you're sitting on 12 months of expenses in cash, you're not being responsible. You're being afraid. And fear is expensive. So let's get tactical. Here's how you calculate your exact number. Step 1, write down your monthly expenses. Not your income, your expenses. Rent, utilities, groceries, insurance, debt payments, everything. Step 2, multiply by your risk factor. If you're a freelancer, multiply by 6. If you're a salaried employee in a stable industry, multiply by 4. If you're a high earner with multiple income streams, multiply by 3. Step 3, add a buffer for your psychological comfort. If you need an extra $2,000 to sleep at night, fine, add it. But name it, call it your fear tax, and know what it's costing you. Step 4, once you hit that number, stop. Every extra dollar goes to debt or investing, no exceptions. Because every month you're over-saving is a month you're under-investing. And under-investing is how you stay middle class forever. Here's the real reason this matters. The emergency fund is the first test of whether you understand money or whether money controls you. If you're hoarding cash because you're afraid, you're being controlled. If you're optimizing cash because you've done the math, you're in control. And control is the difference between wealth and poverty. Now, at first, this sounds impossible. How do you save less and feel more secure? But here's the secret. Security doesn't come from cash. It comes from skills, from network, from multiple income streams, from knowing you can solve problems. Biggie with $10,000 in the bank and a high demand skill set is more secure than someone with $50,000 in the bank and no plan. Because what happens next is this. You hit your number, you stop obsessing over your savings account, you start investing, you start building real wealth. And 5 years from now, your emergency fund is the smallest part of your net worth. It's not your safety. Your portfolio is your safety. Your income is your safety. Your ability to adapt is your safety. Here's your action plan. Today, right now, calculate your real number. Write it down. If you're under it, Automate your savings until you hit it. If you're over it, move the excess into a brokerage account this week. Not next month, this week. Because every day you wait is a day you're losing to inflation and opportunity cost. And here's the disturbing final truth. The reason you were told to save 6 months of expenses is because it keeps you out of the market. It keeps you scared. It keeps you from building wealth. And the people giving that advice either don't know better or don't care. But you know better now. You've got the math. You've got your number. Now go use it. If this changed how you think about emergency funds, do me a favor. Share this with one person who's sitting on too much cash, because the difference between financial freedom and financial fear is often just one conversation. I'll see you in the next one.